Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be a wrap-up of part 1 of March Mystery Madness, the first half of the month. For my first mystery of the month, I decided to go old school and I listened to the audio version of Agatha Christie's The $1 Million Bond Robbery. This is a very short Poirot mystery in which all that happens is we get the background and Poirot figures it out without having to do investigation, just by logically deducing through the basics of what happened. So, I think normally this would be read as part of a short story collection. On its own, is it super satisfying? Maybe not. I think this is the kind of story that when people say they prefer Miss Marple to Poirot because Poirot is slightly annoying, this is one of the ones that will annoy you. If you're a big Poirot fan, or you're just interested in going through everything Agatha Christie's ever written, this is certainly fun. The audiobook was only 20 minutes long, and this was one that was not read by Hugh Fraser, which is a shame because I always enjoy when it's him, because he's plays Hastings in a series with David Suchet. After that, I went back to stuff that is more my kind of thing, and I read 3 volumes in Sheena Kamal's Nora Watts series. The first of which was a novella called In the Grip of It. This takes place in between the first novel and the second, and in it, our main character goes to investigate whether or not abuses are happening at what may be a hippie commune, but may also be a cult. And she also learns some British Columbia history at the same time. I would say that of the 3 pieces in this series that I read this time, this is the one that I think will appeal to the broadest audience, because it is the one that gets the least ridiculous. Now, I'm charmed by how ridiculous these books get as they go on, but if you're looking for a more traditional mystery in which somebody investigates, they figure out what's going on, that's it, the end, then this novella is probably your thing. However, books 2 and 3 in this series do live up to the ridiculousness of the first volume. In volume 2, the main character goes off to Detroit to investigate some mysteries involving her parents. Now, the main character is someone who has a really horribly unlucky life. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong with her. She is one step away from homelessness. She mostly lives with people that she works with at a private investigators agency. In this book, she goes to Detroit to look into her father's history. Her father was a survivor of the 60s scoop, which is when Indigenous kids in Canada were taken away from their families and adopted into non-Indigenous families, often not even within Canada. In this one, she goes off to find the family that her father had been adopted into in the US, who she had never met because he had moved back to Canada to look for his biological family as an adult, so she never met these people. She also finds out mysteries about her mother, who she has no memory of. Her mother, similarly, is someone whose life was affected by a different kind of settler injustice, and was a Palestinian refugee who was born in Lebanon and was then displaced by the Lebanese Civil War, which is how she ended up in Canada. The character is investigating this while Triad members from the first book are trying to kill her, but they've put a hit out on her. She meets a R&B singer who she starts doing duets with. He almost gets killed by virtue of being in association with her, and the drama ramps up from there. Now, in a more traditional mystery or thriller, that might be the final point. What I have just described to you is only the first third of the book. This does go over the edge in exactly the ridiculous ways that the first one did, which I thought was a lot of fun. There is maybe a little bit too much drama with some of the other characters from the investigation group, but overall, I think if you take this in the correct spirit, it is a lot of fun. I think if you're looking for a cozy, you don't want to read this because everything is horrible. And I think if you're looking for something that deals with social issues in a completely straight-faced and respectful way, this is probably not the book to read, because this deals with them in a way that I think if you spent much time in Vancouver, you have met people who are like these characters. However, they do feel sometimes like stereotypes. In addition to the main character, we also regularly run into one of their main clients, who's this Chinese billionaire with a Russian bodyguard. The other investigators she works with are 2 ex-cops, one of whom is Portuguese and one of whom is Somali. She works on the side for this white gay ex-journalist, and if you're not a Vancouver person, that may sound like I'm just listing people's demographic categories, but these are all it's very in line with the kind of stereotypes that exist because everybody knows somebody like that. And so it plays with that. But if you're looking for that to be dealt with in a very serious and exclusively respectful way, which is not to say that this is disrespectful, but just that is allowing itself to do ridiculous things, and that will not be for everyone. I don't know if that made sense. It's going to make less sense as I talk about No Going Back, in which flows directly from this book. I would say that this one you could maybe read without having read the first one, although it would be confusing. This one you absolutely could not, because it takes off basically the day after the second book. This one, she's back in Vancouver. They're doing some investigating. Again, we're dealing with billionaires in the triad. At one point, she and the Portuguese investigator guy end up in Bali chasing people around. The bodyguards are being ridiculous. It is all delightfully nonsensical, but at the same time touching on a lot of very Vancouver-y stuff. So again, this is ridiculous. This is also pretty fun, but not if you're looking for a cozy, and not if you're looking for very respectful social commentary. If you are looking for something that's having fun with social categories that you might know if you've spent a lot of time in Vancouver, these are really entertaining. Next up, I listened to 2/3 of an audiobook, and that was P.D. James's Mistletoe and Murder. This is a 3 short story collection and was published after her death. The first one is a mystery in Agatha Christie style, almost, in which an amateur sleuth has figured out something about a murder, but she doesn't figure out 100% of it until several years later, and then everything comes together in a very neat package, and that also has some nice commentary on the time and place as well. And that was the title story. 2 thumbs up for that. The second story, which I think actually features a young Dalglish, but not as a major character, features someone narrating that he knows that someone is going to be executed for a murder they didn't commit, and you think it's because he's witnessed something, but we find out extra details as we go along. And it's interesting, although maybe not as entertaining as the other one, because it does feel like the character is not someone that I think everyone wants to be in the head of, and I personally found it slightly icky. The third story I haven't listened to yet, so that will be on my next wrap-up. And finally, I read a graphic novel called The Junction by Konyu. This starts out as an investigative story in which we see some law enforcement officers trying to look into whether a child that has turned up is a kid that went missing 11 years ago. The issue is that the child has not aged and should be an adult now, but they seem to be the same age they were when they disappeared. Is something supernatural going on? I'm sure you know the answer to that. The style in which this is written and drawn is very engaging. I think if I were to describe too much of this to you, I think it would misrepresent what this does, because I think saying that this is a story about grief and neighborhood is a fair description of what this is about, aside from the investigative element. But there's a certain human charm to this that I think that doesn't get across. The way that this starts out in the introduction is a little misleading, and I thought was the only real flaw in this book, because it does lead you to think that this is this kind of supernatural story, and then that element disappears and we get something very different. But that is the kind of thing that you only notice, I think, when you go back and think about this, and if you reread it. I think on the first read, it very successfully carries you with it as you go through the story. So I was impressed by this. So yeah, I was absolutely charmed by this. While I don't think it's a perfect product, I do think it's highly entertaining. Alright, so those have been my mystery reads from March so far. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear what you've thought. I'd love to hear what kind of mysteries you have been reading. Have you been going for a mixture of whodunits and thrillers and bits and pieces of other things, or what have you been picking up? Yeah, that's it for now. Ciao.